Call this meeting to order of the Bellingham City Council for November 10th, 2014. A couple of announcements this evening. There will be a work session on rental registration on Monday, November 17th at 1 p.m. following a budget work session here in council chambers. It is not a public hearing. No public comment will be taken. There will also be a public hearing on the final 2015-2016 biennial budget on Monday, November 24th at 7 p.m. here in council chambers. And there will be a public hearing on the dissolution of the Bellingham Public Development Authority on Monday, December 8th at 7 p.m. here in council chambers. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll take roll call.
Jean Knudsen. Here. Kathy Lehman.
Here.
Michael Lillquist.
Here.
Roxanne Murphy.
Here.
Pinky Vargas.
Here.
Jack Weiss.
Here.
Terry Borneman excused.
Okay, we're going to start with our 15-minute public comment period this evening. I've got a number of folks signed up here, so I'll read your name. And if you can come up to the microphone and introduce yourself, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. First up is Steve Crooks, Darcy Jones, and Bob Carmichael.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Kelly, and fellow neighbors. My name is Steve Crooks, and I presently hold a seat on Bellingham's Planning Commission. However, tonight I am here as a resident and former president of the Cordata neighborhood. Today there is a growing conflict in Cordata that threatens to immediately close our community garden. Larrabee Springs, Inc. is the owner and developer of E8, E9 plat in the northern Cordata area, and that area is basically shown on the wall in this particular area there. Our community garden is located in area 1B. That is this is 1B in this area here. Larrabee Springs has requested authorization to build phases to the west, which is over in this area here and up a little ways off the plat. In accordance with E8 and E9 preliminary plat approval, Larrabee Springs requests a decision to allow such a phasing sequence for the E8, E9 plat. In an October response under the signature of the city's planning department and public works, city staff insisted that area 1B and the Klein Road, which is shown in yellow, Klein Road, a perspective arterial, be completed to arterial standards before the latter project phases. This position taken by the city staff threatens the survival of our Cordata community garden. We ask the city to be open to other solutions. Perhaps there is a negotiation room for agreement by both parties for a mutual agreement. The city, Whatcom County, the Whatcom Council of Governments, the Washington State Department of Transportation, as well as other stakeholders, are currently studying the east-west connector issue as part of the ongoing Bakerview to Grandview corridor study. Ultimately, Klein Road may or may not be designed as the regional east-west connector. There is more support for Kelly Road, which is off the map. Kelly Road would parallel Klein Road right here and connect to the Guide Meridian to the east. There is more support for Kelly Road to the north to serve as this connector. Constructing Klein Road to arterial standards, now only to find out later that Kelly Road or some other alternative is a preferred connector, would be a significant waste of time, money, and resources for both parties. Here's our problem. If Larrabee Springs cannot come to a mutual agreement with the city as to phasing of the project, The existing community garden is in immediate jeopardy and will be lost. If they were forced to construct Klein Road to the east at this time, it would have to regain some residential density in the area where the community garden is now located. The community garden is shown in this area right here today. This is all unimproved land. Larrabee Springs has been actually engaged with the Cordata Neighborhood Association and the community garden coordinators for over 5 years. Our neighborhood association places a very high priority on retaining the use of the community garden for as long as possible. Larrabee Springs has allowed the neighborhood association's use of its property for the community garden at no cost to the neighborhood during its existence. The garden is run independently of any city administration or financial support. There are 50 raised beds that are leased to the community residents. Each year, the gardeners not only support their families, but also the Bellingham Food Bank, along with several other support groups throughout the city. Parks Director James King says the garden is a model for the city, and other community gardens should emulate its success. The city states that until Kelly Road is formally replaces Klein Road as the county-wide east-west connector, the city cannot support actions that would jeopardize the completion of the Klein Road to arterial standards, thus causing the garden to close. The original cost to construct the garden was approximately $30,000 of cash and material donations. To relocate and reconstruct it is not an option at this time. Common sense says there is no need for a roadway to nowhere to be constructed at this time. Perhaps an agreement between the city and Larrabee would enable our garden operations to continue, hopefully as long as possible. I am respectfully requesting that the city support Larrabee Springs, Inc. and the Cordata neighborhood, allowing the construction of Larrabee's phasing by mutual agreement satisfactory to both parties. Thank you for your time and understanding.
Thank you very much, Steve. Darcy Jones.
Hi, I'm Darcy Jones with Jones Engineers. I'm here representing Larrabee Springs, Inc. My firm has been processing engineering and construction plans for the ongoing subdivision known as E89, as you saw on the wall, and I've given you some maps. We're currently completing the infrastructure improvements for Cordata Parkway to the extended northerly, as well as Klein Road extended westerly. And the work is being done in support of constructing the first phase of the project, labeled 1A on your maps. And my goal here, the issue for me is sequence of phasing. And my goal is to know exactly what plans I need to be working on right now in order to be able to be building infrastructure next spring. I have to get clarity on what the phasing sequence is going to be on this project, because the plans take 5 or 6 months to get approved, usually. But as you can see on the attached map, the majority of the project lies to the west of Cordata Parkway. And we're currently requesting that we be allowed to continue to construct Klein Road to the west and build houses in the phase to the west of us. And instead of constructing Klein Road to the east, as staff is currently asking us to do. If we were to proceed easterly with the project now, it would be necessary to remove the community garden in favor of apartment buildings as per the approved plat. And we would need the density of those apartment buildings to make the road construction feasible. We understand that city staff feels the project must be built to the east during the next phase. However, we do not agree with that assessment, and I'm going to the conditions of approval of the plat itself. And we've made that clear in our discussions and in our correspondence with staff. There is a significant history of over many years regarding Klein Road and the east-west connector issue. And I understand that's the basis for some staff concern with regard to ultimately seeing that constructed. We expect a final resolution to those discussions to develop from the ongoing comprehensive plan process. There's a transportation corridor study being done right now by WSDOT, COG, City County. It's called the Bakerview to Grandview Corridor Study. And one of the findings of that study, as I clearly understand it, is going to be to resolve this east-west connector issue. So at this point, we believe that an alternative phasing sequence can be applied to this project. Again, it's a phasing sequence issue. And once the final decisions are made, we'll move forward accordingly with regard to Klein Road. But right now, we feel it's premature at this time to build Klein Road to the east. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. Bob Carmichael, followed by Joseph McDonald and Ken Holmes.
Thank you. Bob Carmichael. I am an attorney. I represent Kitech and Larrabee Springs. I want to just emphasize that this is a timing issue more than anything else. We're not looking to not build a road as required under the plat. Kitech is not looking to be excused from any plat conditions. It's a timing issue. Given the fact that the city is going to be considering other alternatives as part of its comprehensive planning process and transportation planning process, we would like the ability to not build that road and do that part of the development until after the city goes through that planning process. The alternative is to force us to build that part of the road next and basically lose a community garden for no reason at all, if in fact that road doesn't have to be built as a connector. What we're looking for is some kind of a solution to the problem. There's nothing in the hearing examiner's plat approval that mandates the sequencing of the plat. It doesn't say that Phase 1B shall be built next. So there's the ability for the city to allow Kitech to build to the west next, wait for some resolution of the planning issues before going forward and building the road to the east. That's what we're basically asking for. One of the things that strikes me with this particular client, Kitech, is that they are truly unusually community-minded, particularly under the leadership of Mr. Ishii, which has been the last several years. Not many of you know, if any of you know, that Kitech redesigned its stormwater facilities for this particular plat at a cost of around $100,000 so that that community garden would not have to be moved. There was no requirement in the plat approval that Kitech do that. It's not coming from a permit requirement. It's not coming from a mitigation requirement. It was basically because Kitech understands how important that community garden is to people in Cordata. And as has been mentioned, that area has been allowed to be used for free for many years. In the development of the current phase, the D.R. Horton plans had the stormwater pond being built right where the community garden is now. And again, Kitech spent around $100,000 in redesign and construction costs just within the last year so that garden could remain. And it would be a shame for that to have to be lost at this point for, in our opinion, not a good reason. That's our position. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Joseph McDonald, followed by Ken Holmes and Ellen Lee.
Sorry, you get more time.
Go ahead, Joseph.
You have to excuse the fact that due to the several strokes, I have a speech impediment. I sound like a robot, but it's better than not being able to talk at all. You may remember me from a couple years ago when I complained about people not leashing their dogs and Animal Control not doing anything about it. Since then, a lot of changes have taken place. Before that, I constantly complained to Animal Control, and they constantly did nothing about the problem. I carry a little blowhorn with me. It is meant for use on a boat when in distress. It is the most humane way I can think of to deal with uncontrolled dogs. But owners don't like it. Last September, after using it, an owner with Chihuahuas got confrontational with me, Luckily, nothing happened. I've expressed before to Animal Control and to the police that I am at a disadvantage and that I don't want to get hurt. I do not intend to get hurt and end up telling the police that it did not have to be this way. It is my hope that if anyone gets physical with me, that I will retaliate. So you can see this is a very serious issue that deserves your attention. I talked to Animal Control by asking them to talk with the owner about how he plans on controlling his two little monsters in the future. I asked them to communicate back to me. They never did, despite calling them several times. A lot of people believe that they can harass others with their dogs. Animal Control, with their silence, is showing that they also foster this belief. I should not be talking with you right now, but Animal Control will not talk with me. After this meeting, I would like to meet with my councilman to find out how he is going to advocate to Animal Control for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Ken Holmes, followed by Ellen Lee and Beverly Jacobs.
Ken Holmes, Bellingham. I was right. I was correct. Last meeting, Mr. Borneman confirmed what I had been saying all along. This ordinance is an attempt to control off-campus housing of Western Washington University students. During discussions by council last meeting, he told us of a phone call he received the night before. Intelligent people, he said. They did not buy a house on the hill because there were drunken Western Washington University students who lived there and they didn't mow their lawn. And it looked so bad there that they didn't even bother to look inside to see what the house is like inside. And therefore, in his opinion, we need an inspection regimen. Well, let me ask you, do you think you're going to stop Western Washington University students from drinking and getting drunk with this ordinance? If so, I've got some waterfront I'd like to sell you. How about, do you think they're going to start mowing their lawns? Are they going to pick up their beer cans when they accidentally drop a case of them? You know, where does it say in real estate law that you get to pick and choose your neighbors? And if you don't like the neighbors and you want to live in that house, that you ought to be able to get them out of there? There's no such law like that I'm aware of. I got some nice neighbors in my neighborhood. I like them. I got some I don't care for. But I don't get to pick and choose who gets to live there. They bought the place, they live there, they pay the taxes, you collect the taxes. You know, it's just ridiculous that you keep going over this situation. By the way, I've been real concerned because I had heard things that this was a done deal clear back at the first of the year. Yeah, I did. This is a done deal, this vote. And during the year, at one of the other meetings, I was sitting right there, and the one lady came up the other one. And that was when the meeting when Borneman kind of tanked Mr. Weiss's proposal. And they said, the one little old lady says to the other, she says, I thought this was a done deal. I thought this was a done deal. Well, if this is a done deal, why are we meeting about it? You did see the cartoon in the paper last spring where the editorial cartoon, it says, the council does not listen. Why wouldn't they listen unless they had their minds made up? I guess that's my bit for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Ellen Lee, followed by Beverly Jacobs and Juliana Guy.
Hi, my name is Ellen Lee, and I'm a resident and property owner here in Bellingham, Washington. Very happy to be a resident here in the town of subdued excitement. I'm here to talk to you or to ask you to consider some of the concerns about sidewalk safety here in Bellingham, not only for around residential areas, but in front of businesses. Specifically in the downtown area, I've given you a couple pages. I tried to make it somewhat brief. I've named a couple businesses that have some encroaching structures that are onto the sidewalk that actually don't leave the 5 feet between their business structure and either the edge of the sidewalk or an opening in what's called a tree well by the city of Bellingham. And those need to be, of course, addressed. I have contacted the few areas that I felt were the only places I knew to call, which were the city of Bellingham, that's Heather Higgins, and I also contacted the police department, Kayla, who's in charge of code enforcement, as well as the permitting department in the city of Bellingham, and there wasn't a lot of action in terms of they kind of, it was surprising to me that they said the only way that they deal with any kind of code enforcement is by complaint driven. And so case by case, there's not a, they don't go, for example, area by area, business areas or residential throughout the year and kind of take a look at, say, for example, Sunnyland, and then they look at lettered streets the next month, and then they look at another area. I don't believe that people do it intentionally. I don't think that people intentionally have overgrown bushes or trees. I think most homeowners don't understand that that's the law, that they have to have 8 feet of clearance vertically and 5 feet of clearance along the sidewalk, and same thing goes for businesses. As someone who is blind in the community, I'm well aware that it can cause a hazard, not just for myself, but somebody in a wheelchair. There needs to be access for people walking both ways. Perhaps somebody who has a child that's pushing a stroller, same idea. These things need to be taken into consideration so no one gets hurt. And as city council members, I really want you to take this into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. Beverly Jacobs, followed by Juliana Guy and Gwen McEwen.
Good evening. I'm a resident and a proud person of Cordata Neighborhood Association. We have built an ideal model community garden that was worked for and donated by so many people in the area to present it as a model. It is no cost to the city. Kitech has been very generous with giving us this space. We knew it wasn't forever, but I'm going to ask you, could you please consider letting us keep our garden while they build on the left side instead of the right? Eventually, we know we will have to give up this garden, but when it's a model for the rest of Bellingham, what are you thinking? Please give us a chance to keep our community garden. We are in an area where we have to beg for every amenities because we have been for a long time the greenless people. We finally have a picnic table in the Cordata Meadows, and we would like to have library service eventually, but please give us some time with our community garden. Thank you.
Thank you, Beverly. Juliana Guy, followed by Gwen McEwen and Jim and Betsy Simcox.
Julie Guy, Cordata area. One thing I learned in showbiz in the 40 years I had in broadcasting is don't try to follow a really good act. Beverly has said it all, and I am not going to use my 3 minutes because you know where we stand. I'm president of the Cordata Neighborhood Association, and we urgently request that you consider negotiating this situation, which I'm sure can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Gwen McEwen.
My name is Gwen McEwen. I live in the Cordata neighborhood. I'm a resident in Bellingham, a new retiree here for about the last 14 months. To build on what the previous speakers have already said in favor of keeping the garden in its present location as long as possible, I'd like to talk very briefly about the benefits that the neighborhood users of the garden derive from having the garden there. I feel that these benefits are both tangible and intangible. The tangible ones could be counted in hundreds of pounds of vegetables that have been grown and donated to shelters and food banks and worthy causes of that sort. Flowers have been grown and donated to, I believe, a women's shelter or some sort of crisis shelter that needs a little sprucing up. I think the intangible value is as great as, or maybe even greater than, the tangible value. And it includes things like community building, because the further north that the city builds, the further removed from the city center a lot of residents are. It can be very isolating, particularly for those who maybe don't get out so much or so often. To have something like a garden that brings a diverse range of people together is exceedingly important. The physical benefits to one's health for being out in the air and exercising and digging and pulling and so forth, lots of benefits. Just the feel-good quality of being out there nurturing something in Mother Nature's garden. So please give us a chance to keep the garden in its present location as long as possible. We recognize that someday it may have to move, but let's don't do it now if it's not really necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Gwen. Betsy Simcox?
We thought we were just signing in like everybody else when they walk in.
Oh, okay.
So I'll pass on to her.
Great. Sharon Quelfrey? Come on up.
Hi there. I am a active member in Cordata Community Garden, and I was here last Thursday night, and so I thought I'd join you again tonight with a little more information. I have something here from the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Services. I do a bed for them. They are the battered women and children. And so they gave this letter for me to read to you. It says, "To whom it may concern, I'm writing this letter to express appreciation and support for the Cordata Community Garden. The Cordata Community Garden provides healthy, organic produce for the residents of Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Services Safe Shelter. Women and children staying at our shelter, are survivors of domestic violence, and being able to provide them with nutritious food is an important part of helping them to find safety and establish normalcy in their lives. We are grateful for this service from the Cordata Community Garden. Thank you, Elizabeth Hart, Program Supervisor." Also, I was in touch with Max at the Bellingham Food Bank. In this past summer season, we provided 1,013 pounds of produce from our community garden, to the Bellingham Food Bank. So, and somebody here just mentioned about how it gets people out. It's a way for people to release tension. There was one gal in our garden who's lost 40 pounds over the summer. She came into the garden not walking, overweight, and so she started walking to the garden, grew all of her produce and ate it, and she just kept, every time she came back to the garden, she would say, "Gosh, I've lost another 8 pounds." So, there are many goods that come out of this garden. And sometimes you find gardens in funky little places. Well, I hope that we find Cordata Community Garden amongst residential homes and apartments and a parking lot and maybe a road that goes nowhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? No. Come on up, Paul. Don't mind Jean.
I won't.
I know you don't.
Paul Schisler, Bellingham resident. I wanted to say a couple words about the housing outreach team that's on your agenda tonight. But first, I'd like to say I'm one of the many fans of community gardens because of all the multiple layers of benefits, tangible and intangible, as someone said. And it's a good model. We should do more of those, huh? It's a low-cost, no-cost thing that cities can help to do. And so I hope the city can do more of those. The community can do more of those. The Housing Outreach Team wanted to come and express my support for the use of the fund as proposed and give you 3 reasons for that. We've realized that it's one of the areas where we're a bit weak in our housing system right now. Working to get people off the street is a difficult job. It takes time, but one place we need to augment what we're doing now is the street outreach. Doing outreach without having rental assistance available to house people isn't going to work. So we need both those components. I think it's a great proposal. Second thing I wanted to say is that the Housing Outreach Team and the other uses of the Bellingham Home Fund will continue to evolve. You've already made changes in the Home Fund administration and financing plan. Each year you'll probably make or consider additional changes. So for the rest of the life of the 7-year levy, there will be probably some other changes to consider, but this is a good change. And the third thing I wanted to say, it's not an either-or thing. It's not like we're going to do more services and rental vouchers. We can also do more to create additional units of housing that stay affordable long-term with the Home Fund, with other federal funds the city has, but there are other resources a city can pull together. So there's a list of those that any town can consider on the menu, bringing additional resources to the issue of housing affordability. I'll mention just a couple. Beefing up the city's community development function to be more proactive about housing development and building the capacity of organizations that do build housing, affordable, both private and nonprofit and private for-profit companies usually team up to build these projects. So there's things we can do to increase the number of projects per year so that it does outstrip the funding available, and we can justify more non-local funding to match the significant amount of local funding that we now have. We'll be able to outcompete most places in the state because we have the Home Fund available. So there's a lot more the city can do than just the Home Fund, and I'm looking forward to working with you and your staff and the many people in this community that want to figure out how to build a better housing system. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close the public comments section of this meeting and move on to committee standing.
Kathy?
Yes, Jack?
My understanding is that the mayor, during the mayor's report, that some of our staff will come and speak to the community garden issue.
Yeah, are you hoping we might do that sooner?
Well, I don't know. Just seeing people leaving, they may want to hear a response, but okay. Well, we should get the people that are leaving right now because they might want to hear it.
So, yeah, folks, if anyone is interested in the community garden issue in the Cordata neighborhood, I think we're going to ask Mayor Kelly to address that now instead of later. So if you would like to stay.
You're welcome.
We've got a relatively light agenda this evening, so we can do a little bit more what we want.
Well, I'd love to address that question, and also I've brought our new planning director, Rick Seppel, up here for an introduction. So, and I told him that I would address this. He said he'd do it if I wanted him to. I thought, this is trial by fire.
Yeah, really.
Let's let him skip this one, and I will.
Yeah, right.
That's what I thought. Well, first of all, the Cordata Neighborhood Garden is a model, and I believe that we want to maintain that model operating out in that neighborhood. Rick this morning came and told me about this problem. I know, as far as I know, no one had called my office or talked to me about it, but I'd be happy to look into it and bring back whatever information I get to you. I think there were some rules that were, that were having to be followed by planning staff. But as I said, I just knew a very little bit about this, and I think it'd be better for me to find out more about it before I just give you an answer. But the goal of making sure that there's a community garden that operates well in the community, out in the Cordata community, is a good one, and I need to understand better how the road and the garden affect each other.
Thank you, Kelly.
Okay? But I still want to introduce him a little bit more than that. Is that okay?
Certainly. First, maybe, can I ask council, do you have any questions or comments for Kelly or anyone here about the garden? Roxanne?
I was hoping we'd be able to stay in touch with the folks who provided testimony tonight
Sure,
about this.
we can do that. I happen to know at least 3 of them very well.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the luxury for a second of just adding, I really appreciate that so many folks came out from your neighborhood this afternoon, or this evening, I guess. My mom lives in Cordata, and I was real close with Ben and Dee Andrews for a long time when they were working on the garden, and I know a lot of the history of it, and it's true that a lot of passion went into a blank space, and you created a real community center for that neighborhood, and we thank you. It's not something the city can do without our citizens, so thank you very much to all the folks who worked hard on that. Okay, why don't we move on to Rick?
Well, one of the things I'd like to say is that we are so pleased to have Rick here, and in his short time, since last Wednesday, was that your first day? Thanks. First day. He has already been a very strong contributor to many of the discussions we're having about issues like this. So it's a pleasure to have him. I'm thrilled. Port Townsend is a nice place, and I think we've all seen it. And I don't know if you got the link. I'd asked Sophia to send you a link of a wonderful piece that was in the paper. Basically, the newspaper lamenting Rick's leaving from the community, and it was very, well, it was a nice, strong advocacy for what he'd done, and makes me feel really smart. So we'll see. I like things like that. And Rick, you'll be the one, obviously, that will be talking to these neighbors, the first blush. So you guys see him? He's right here. Yeah. Okay. But I didn't think I'd put him on the hot seat tonight. So go ahead. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the council? Because we're real pleased Rick is here.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, it's a privilege to be with you this evening. It's a privilege to be in Bellingham and join your staff. I look forward to working with you on issues big and small as we move forward in the coming years. I should say on the record, I do support community gardens.
He made that clear today.
I will work with our staff to reconcile this fairly for both the neighborhood, the developer, and for the city's interest long term.
Great. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah,
Welcome, Rick.
Roxanne?
I think I've also seen that you also support bicycles.
Yes, yes, an unabashed supporter. Perhaps there's a support group I could join in Bellingham.
Be happy to help you connect with that.
It's a very nice fit for the city of Bellingham. Anyone else have anything to say? Okay, we'll move along. Thank you. Welcome, Rick. Glad to have you here. Thank you, Kelly. Thanks, everyone from the Cordata neighborhood. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move into our reports from afternoon committee meetings. First up is Finance and Personnel with Michael Lilliquist, Chair.
Thank you, Kathy. The Finance Personnel Committee had 2 items before us today. The first one is an ordinance approving the advanced refunding of an outstanding 2005 limited tax general obligation bond. It's actually a series of bonds in 2 series. This ordinance authorizes the issuance of limited tax general obligation bonds in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $6.1 million. Bond proceeds are to be used to advance refund currently outstanding bonds that were issued in 2005 for the purpose of capturing savings with the lower interest rates that are now in effect. This bond issue will be issued with the same amortization period as the original 2005 bonds, and is expected to save in excess of 3% of the outstanding debt service with true cost interest not to exceed 5.4%. Round dollar figures, that may be from $300,000 to $400,000 saved by getting a lower interest rate. This ordinance delegates authority to the finance director to finalize and approve the terms of the bond. The bond ordinance anticipates a negotiated sale with D.A. Davidson serving as the underwriter. Basically, we're giving the administration, the finance director, the authority to go ahead and refinance the bond as long as it stays within the bounds, so we actually do achieve the savings we're after. This afternoon, the Finance Personnel Committee voted unanimously to recommend approval of this ordinance, and I so move.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Actually, yeah, it's an ordinance.
Pardon me?
I was confirming it was an ordinance, not a
Oh, okay.
resolution or something.
It is an ordinance. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, motion passes 6-0 with Terry Borneman absent.
The second item out of two was an ordinance establishing the property tax levy rate for 2015. Mayor Linville's budget provides for a general fund budget for 2015 as part of the budget process. The City Council will need to establish a property tax levy rate for the upcoming year. Our packet had a lot of extra printouts in it that weren't really necessary. The ordinance itself is just 2 pages, and it basically says we're taking the statutory 1% increase, which, by the way, is below the rate of inflation, with the new construction in town and the 1%, it actually adds up to an exactly zero. A $250,000 house would pay the exact same property tax this year as last year, which is approximately $684 for that size of a house. The exact levy rate will be adjusted at the end of the year when the assessor actually finalizes all the numbers on finances and property tax assessments. The increase in revenues due to this 1% increase is around $340,000, and new construction is around $340,000. So that's the slight increase that comes to the city. This afternoon, the committee voted unanimously to recommend approval of this ordinance, and I so move.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 6-0 with Terry Borneman absent.
And the Finance Personnel Committee.
Okay, next up we have Lake Whatcom Reservoir and Natural Resources Committee with Pinky Vargas chair.
We had one item in front of us today. It was just a report out from the November 3rd Lake Whatcom Policy Group meeting. The main focus of that meeting was to review the critical policy questions for the plan, including financing and the process for plan adoption. And this particular meeting, our focus was on the HIP program. The HIP program is the Homeowner Incentive Program. And just for clarification, that allocation is about $6,000 per owner for improvement on your land projects for the watershed. Staff are currently working on 3 reports right now, and they are very busy. And an accomplished report to cover the 2010-14 period, then the 2015-2019 Lake Whatcom Management Program work plan, and the TMDL response plan. So they've got a fair amount of things on their docket right now. This year represents the last year of the Silver Beach pilot project for the HIP program. And over the 2011-14 period of the grant-funded pilot project, 247 lots in the Silver Beach Creek drainage area were assessed, and 127 property owners completed a project paid for by the program. Bravo! In the program, reimbursed expenses, as I said, were set at $6,000 per lot. They have 5 main goals. I'm not going to go over all of those in regards to what the mitigation will be through the HIP program, but one I did want to highlight is an engaged community of watershed property owners who advocate for and help maintain residential stormwater solutions. So that really means that it does take our community talking to each other and sharing the results of what the HIP program has actually done for their own yards and their own experiences, and how that helps all of us. Continuation of this program is critical because about 20% of the watershed is accounted for by properties where phosphorus cannot be controlled using public facilities. And these include the properties abutting the lake that transmit stormwater directly into the lake. So one goal of the program in the next 5 years is to see how far things can go using a voluntary program. We had a pretty good discussion today about this meeting and the results. And one of the things that we want everyone to know is we realize that that we need a little bit of flexibility on our program, and not everything is a cookie cutter fix for every yard, and that we are looking at how we can enhance volunteerism to be part of the program, and maybe doing incremental steps with people. So we just want everyone to know that we are being much more open next year to please look at our HIP program and how that can benefit all of us, and probably do some improvements and take those soggy spots out of your yard. So I encourage you to get involved in the HIP program. And just know that the policy group was generally in agreement with the proposal and the duration of the HIP program for our budgets next year. The city will be contributing $200,000 per year, and the county is part of our program next year, so hurrah. And they're contributing $25,000. So as our program evolves, the staff are looking at adding additional organizations to help get the word out. And staff will phase in program improvements for the 2015-2016 period. If anyone is interested in joining us in this meeting, our next policy group meeting will be on December 1st at 1:30 in the fireplace room. Does anyone have any questions?
Great report.
Any committee?
Thank you, Pinky. Next up, Parks and Recreation with Roxanne Murphy, Chair.
Hello, hello. So we had 3 agenda items this afternoon. The first is an agreement with Bellingham Technical College for the Perry Center lease and facility use agreement at Maritime Heritage Park, and public parking facility use agreement at Bellingham Technical College main campus. Basically, what this is that Bellingham Technical College created a new building at Maritime Heritage Park, and that houses a fisheries technology program. So this replaces an old city building, and thus we need to set a new lease with the state of Washington through Bellingham Technical College, and that lease will create responsibilities for adjacent infrastructure in fish ponds, channels, parking, and common areas. And so we considered this in our committee meeting this afternoon. It received unanimous approval, and I so move that we enter into the lease for the facility use agreement with the state of Washington.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0 with Terry Borneman absent.
So our second agenda item was rather exciting, and it's something that I hope you will all check out through our city site. It's the Cornwall Beach Park Master Plan. So this plan has gone before so many different sections of our community. It has gone before our Parks and Recreation Board. It has gone before neighborhood groups through public meetings and different steering committees, through the port, through the city. And so basically what we did was we got into the nuts and bolts of what this conceptual plan is, and we're very hopeful that this is going to create such a great recreational area. Also, we talked a lot about how we're going to be focusing on the cleanup and redevelopment of this area, and so we decided unanimously to pass this, and I hope you will all vote to approve the Cornwall Beach Master Plan.
So we had a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'll note that even Jack Weiss gave a tip of the hat to this plan.
That's right.
Michael Lilliquist?
Well deserved.
I know this is going to be approved tonight, and we didn't have time to discuss in the afternoon. I had questions that had to do with the habitat restoration aspect of it. I talked with the staff and made clear my concerns, and also was reassured that the Ms. Lacroix, who's doing our habitat study, has copies of the plan now, and those habitat work will be integrated with it. I just didn't want us to create with our master planning process a conflict between human users and habitat restoration, and I've had those, I've had some assurances on that regard, so that's very nice.
Good job, Ted.
Yeah, Ted, all you have to do is walk up here and we're getting assurances. Is there anything you would like to add?
No, just exactly what Michael said. We did have a conversation after committee meeting today. We have received the draft waterfront nearshore habitat report. So Renee will be going through that as well as sharing that with the Parks Department. There's been some really good coordination between the Parks Department, Natural Resources, not only for the park master planning, but also for the cleanup, as Councilmember Murphy mentioned. So I think that we clearly heard the direction to focus on habitat or make sure that that was being evaluated, and we'll come back when we have more details about that.
Okay, great. Roxanne, did you have something?
Yeah, just that I want to assure the community that this isn't a completely closed-off deal. So if you have any input that you'd like to provide to this plan, the Parks Department is very happy to hear it as we go forward.
Thank you, Roxanne. Okay, I believe we had a second. I don't remember who it was.
Pinky.
Pinky, the illustrious second from Pinky. So, all those in favor of approving the Cornwall Beach Park Master Plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0 with Terry Borneman absent.
And our last item today was additional spending authority for the 2014 golf course budget. Basically what we're doing is a pond restoration project, and this pond restoration project needs $70,000 in additional spending, and it would come out of the golf course fund. This is needed because, let me see here, we need help with funding the permitting, monitoring, and construction. And so this was unanimously approved in our committee meeting, and I move that we vote to approve the additional spending authority for the 2014 golf course budget.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I'm going to do something I never do, and I'm going to vote no in principle because I do not think the city should be involved in the business of a golf course.
Already are.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion passes 5-1 with Terry Borneman absent.
End of committee.
Thank you, Roxanne. Next up is Community and Economic Development with, I think, Jean Knutson chair.
Yeah, only the second time in about a couple, no, I'm just kidding. We had one item. It's a resolution amending the 2012 Housing Levy Administrative and Financial Plan. The 2012 Bellingham Housing Levy authorized $21 million over 7 years to provide, produce, and/or preserve affordable housing in Bellingham and to assist low-income tenants. The City Council approved the Administration and Financial Plan on November 9, 2012. An amendment is proposed that would increase funding for rental assistance and supportive services to fund a homeless outreach team through 2019. The homeless outreach team would include new rental housing vouchers and new outreach services. The outreach services would then assist homeless persons find safe and sanitary housing as well as other services. The fiscal impact is the amendment would reallocate $1,250 from the Production and Preservation of the Homes Program to Rental Assistance and Supportive Services Program. There would not be an overall increase or decrease in 2012 housing levy revenues or expenditures. This afternoon, we heard from David Stahlheim from Planning and Community Development. We heard from Gail DeHoog and Greg Winter. We saw a very heartwarming video. There's over 200 people on a daily basis out in our community that are homeless. So they've done a great job bringing this forward. The committee had a mixed recommendation of 2-0 and 1 abstention, but I'll go ahead and move the resolution.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Michael?
I was the abstention because I totally support the homeless outreach team and those efforts. My concern had to do with the shift in the emphasis in the program. Originally, 3/4 of the money was going towards housing production and preservation. That shifted away. Now it's only 2/3. Now 1/3 is going towards the other aspects, very much needed aspects of providing support and rental subsidy for housing. I don't particularly like the shift because I think that production is actually the long-term solution. However, I will take Paul Schisler's advice, who spoke, and with some other people I spoke to this afternoon, and I will simply find ways to improve the housing production portion of our program. It's actually exceeded its goals to date, but I think it can do a lot more. There's evidence that there are maybe some changes that can be made in that aspect of the program too, so that both parts of our home fund can exceed expectations. And so given that commitment to what I hope we can do in the future, I will be supporting this tonight.
Great, thank you, Michael. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Pinky?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a comment. We had a really good discussion this afternoon, and we have had a lot of concern around the displacement of people, where they're going to go when we close the Aloha, affordable housing. We're very aware of this. And this is actually a segue to kind of help everyone be relocated until we have housing for them. It is supporting the Housing First model, which we know works, and we need to make that a priority. And it does not mean that we won't be building affordable housing. It just means that we are helping those who will be displaced or have no home currently get into housing as soon as possible.
That's a great summary. Thanks, Pinky. Anyone else? Roxanne.
Well, I just wanted to say I'm so terribly excited that we're going to do this, because I fundamentally believe you can't always bring people to the services. We need to bring the services to the people. That's the value that I see in the street team, and that's why I'm so happy to be supporting this. I see this not only as helping the populations that we need to so desperately work with and support, but it also will help clean up our downtown. It would help out our neighborhoods. It's going to help out with redevelopment. I mean, it can go so far and do so many different things to create an overall Bellingham that's a better place to be.
Thank you, Roxanne. Mayor Kelly.
Since I care about this a lot, I'd like to just make one comment. Every day in my office, I am confronted with somebody, whether it's a neighbor, an individual, an organization, where this program will give them some hope for today. Not for in 3 years when we can build something, but for today. And I really appreciate David Stahlheim's support in this, in moving forward to make sure that we're not going to build supported and affordable housing, subsidized. We're also going to work on more affordable housing for everybody, but this gives me a tool as somebody who has to deal with this problem every day to help people now. And I want to thank all of you. Michael, thank you for changing your mind. I want to thank all of you for supporting this, because it's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, and we had a great presentation this afternoon from Greg Winter and Gail DeHogue. I just want to say thanks to them as well. So many people in our community have contributed to this. It's an ongoing struggle for the city of Bellingham, as well as probably every other city on the planet Earth. But we've got incredible professionals who are dedicated and really putting in heart to this work, and I think it's showing, and I feel really good about this program that we're going to approve. So all those in favor of passing the resolution amending the 2012 Housing Levy Administrative and Financial Plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0 with Terry Borneman absent.
Yay.
Thank you very much, Jean. Next up, I'll report out from the Committee of the Whole meeting this afternoon. We had a presentation from FutureWise. It was information only. They were sharing with us that they received a grant from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to help further inform the city's comprehensive plan update. The city will partner with FutureWise to study identifying infrastructure needs in the Squalicum Creek watershed. The result of this, well, the project will run approximately from October of this year to December of 2015, so about 14 months. The result will be that we'll have some prioritization of projects affecting the water quality of Puget Sound and Salish Sea, and it'll help us with our grant scoring in the future for these projects. And there will be an extensive community involvement element to them as well. So thank you to FutureWise for working with the city on this. Next up, we had a discussion of our city-specific legislative agenda. Additional items that we talked about with our lobbyists were for Washington State transportation, law enforcement, and housing. And we also called out a couple of federal items. We mostly got head nods to continue the direction that we're moving in, and it was essentially provide direction and information only, kind of a mix it seemed. And then third, we had an Access Bellingham update, which is our public access component on BTV 10, but we were running late after many enlightening discussions, and so we decided to table that until our next meeting on November 24th. and jump directly to our biennial budget work session. In our work session this afternoon, we addressed the Bellingham Public Library and the Fire Department. It was essentially information only. I do not see any minutes to approve from evening meetings. Is there any old or new business? Pinky.
I did discuss this earlier, but I just wanted to mention that our deadline was today for the Georgetown Energy Prize to submit our energy plan. And I just want to commend Mark Gardner and Anita Asaturo and thank the city staff for the support on getting the plan in and for us to be a candidate. So this is a really big deal. 52 cities all had their deadline today, and we made ours. So thank you.
That's great, thank you. Anyone else, old or new business? Okay, seeing none. A report out from our executive session this afternoon. We had one item, potential property acquisition. Staff provided information on a potential property acquisition matter. Direction was given and no action was taken. Next up is the mayor's report. It is possible this is the earliest mayor's report we have ever convened. Yeah, I like it, yeah. You're still awake. There's still a crowd, yeah. Is your microphone on?
No, of course
not. Oh, okay. Well, might want to.
Now it is.
Okay.
I do need to say one more thing about Rick, because this is the honeymoon period. He has an appreciation of mid-century furniture. Yeah, that's...
Match made in heaven there.
I know, it really is. And also, Kathy, when you were talking about, not having a golf course, we are actually looking at our lines of business that potentially others can do. And the good thing about the golf course is it pays for itself. It's a good business model. If we have a golf course, that's a good model. We have this thing called a cemetery, and that one isn't quite, the business model isn't quite the same.
I feel like there's one other one too, maybe.
Yeah, there probably is, but I'm not going to mention it tonight because I want to stay friends with Jack.
I won't either.
All right. So the other thing is tomorrow there is a Veterans Day celebration at City Hall. It starts at 11 o'clock. So, of course, I invite all of you and anybody in the public to come. Veterans Day is special to me. My dad is alive, is still alive, and he is a World War II veteran, like the last class. So he is 88, and he's he's about the youngest of the World War II veterans that are still living. So I always like to celebrate Veterans Day for him. There's two public hearings on two safety-related ordinances that we have talked about. One is the pedestrian safety ordinance, and you actually had someone talking about some pedestrian safety today. That was kind of serendipitous, fortuitous. No. And then the second one is an ordinance for failure to respond. There is a concern about writing ordinances and having them not be a deterrent for illegal activity. So, Peter, you want to describe those for me?
Yeah, so we wanted to advise council that we're going to have a public hearing on December 8th on these two, even though a public hearing wouldn't be required. Both of them arise, at least in part, out of the community solutions work that was done earlier. The pedestrian safety zone specifically will expand the zone in which sitting and lying on the sidewalk will be prohibited, and it's the downtown area expanded to the city center area, not exactly, but larger than it currently is, as well as the Fairhaven Business District. It also includes precluding riding a bicycle on the sidewalks in those areas, and skateboards, and also it expands the time period during which sitting and lying is precluded. Right now it's from 7 to 9 p.m. That would be extended to 12 p.m. in recognition of some of the entertainment business and the pedestrian traffic that's related to that. So that's on the pedestrian safety zone ordinance. The other ordinance, the failure to respond ordinance, is we have civil infractions, for example, for drinking in public. Well, a lot of folks are not deterred by the citation of a civil infraction, and it's completely ignored. And so this ordinance would create a misdemeanor for someone who didn't respond at all to that civil infraction, and it would subject that person potentially to a misdemeanor. And so we're hoping to gain compliance with those laws that for which civil infraction is the penalty.
So both of those would have a public hearing on December 8th? Okay.
And the thing with the second one, the compliance one, is with the action you took tonight having to do with the outreach team, that, we understand it's a more complicated issue than just citing someone. So that we'll have another avenue besides just the citation. We'll have the social service support to make sure that, one, there may be compliance, and secondly, that we're getting additional treatment. So,
Great, thank you. Okay, that is great. Jack?
I had a request about the consent agenda when you get to it.
We're at it.
Okay. I'd like to request that we move item number 1 out of the consent agenda and have it dealt separately.
Okay. So minus that first item, Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for items 2, 3, and 4 from the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda passes 6-0 with Terry Borneman absent. So we had one item pulled out of the consent agenda, consideration of final plat approval for Division 1 of the King Mountain Phase 1 preliminary plat. And it appears that staff was ready for this, and you are here.
Members of the council, statutorily, the only question that's asked at final plat is, are all the conditions of approval met? And staff, after review, both Public Works and Planning, believe all the conditions are met. There is no provision for additional conditions to be placed or modifications to be done on the plat. The purpose for that under 5817 RCW is, as folks go to spend money to do the construction, to fix in place the requirements to avoid changing circumstance that could not be met.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? And a second. Any discussion? Jack?
The reason why I asked this to be pulled, because I do want to vote against it. I understand that it does meet the technical requirements. This developer has been given a number of concessions by the city over the years. And I feel that the concessions that the hearing examiner gave in this particular situation are not in the community's best interest. And I just feel like I want to vote against it, even realizing it is technically supposed to be approved. I really do feel that we need to have a conversation, a discussion about things like sidewalks when it is a situation where sidewalks are supposed to be built on both sides of a street, and then we end up just saying, oh, well, you don't have to do it on the other side of the street, and we just basically give it's a gift to whoever the developer is. What we should be doing, I feel, is taking a in lieu payment for that second sidewalk and be able to use that money to go and build some of the sidewalks that we truly do need in other places. It may be that some of these cul-de-sacs that are called out in this development plan, this plat, we don't need to have sidewalks on both sides. But that doesn't mean that that developer should be treated differently than any other developer in the community, and that money that could be used from an in lieu payment could really be used to fix up the rest of the community that has had some real serious pedestrian issues. That's one example. There's some other ones in there, but I just wanted to at least point out one to you.
That's great, thank you. Anyone else want to speak? Okay, seeing none, we have a motion and a second to approve consideration of the final plat for Division 1 of the King Mountain Phase 1 preliminary plat. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Motion passes 5-1 with Jack Weiss in opposition and Terry Borneman absent. Okay, final consideration of ordinances.
Agenda Bill 20557, an ordinance of the City of Bellingham, Washington relating to parking, increasing the maximum on-street parking time limit to 72 hours, increasing parking infraction penalties, updating and clarifying various regulatory and administrative provisions of the parking code, and amending chapters 1118, 1133, and 1136 of the Bellingham Municipal Code.
Move third and final.
Second.
Jean Knutson,
Yes.
Kathy Lehman,
Aye.
Michael Lillquist.
Aye.
Roxanne Murphy.
Aye.
Pinky Vargas.
Aye.
Jack Weiss.
Aye.
Terry Borneman excused. Ordinance passes 6-0.
Okay, congratulations, everyone. Welcome, Rick. We are adjourned.
Good job, Marie. First time you did that. That was good.